They say that dog is man's best friend, and for good reason. Dogs are so devoted to their masters that even the shortest separation is very hard for them. But what if the owner forgets about his dog and continues to live a happy, carefree life? How will his abandoned pet feel, and how will she behave? Will she also forget, or will she faithfully wait for her master to return and take her home again? This is what today's story is about. After graduating from university, it took Paul a long time to find a job. While he was studying, he lived on campus, but after he received his diploma, he had to look for his own housing. He did not have enough money for a house, so he rented a small room in someone else's home and began to search for a good-paying job. He submitted applications everywhere he could find, but all his attempts were in vain. One day, on his way home, he came across a stray dog that was lying curled up near a heating main. He called out to the dog, and she immediately perked up, began to wag her tail, and ran right up to him. Paul felt sorry for the stray dog because she, like him, was also alone in this world, so he took her home. After that, they spent all of their free time together. Paul eventually found a part-time job and made enough money to feed himself and his dog. Paul named her Lucky because she seemed to bring luck into his life. Things gradually improved, and Paul was even offered a full-time job close to his home. After a year, Paul gained enough experience and confidence to apply at a firm and was hired on permanently. However, his position required him to travel to different places 6 months at a time. When it was time for him to leave, he didn't know what else to do with his dog, so he decided to take her with him. Having arrived at the airport, Paul was very disappointed to find out he had to get a veterinary passport for the dog in order to be able to take her on the plane with him. Since he hadn't thought of this ahead of time, there was nothing he could do now. It was time to board the plane. Lucky faithfully sat next to Paul's feet and looked straight into his eyes. She was so excited to be going somewhere with him, wagging her tail and periodically licking her owner's shoes. Not knowing what else to do, Paul simply removed her collar and stomped his feet, driving Lucky away from him. She backed up a few feet, not understanding what was happening, but then she would just run right back up to Paul, wagging her tail and trying to cuddle. Paul picked up his suitcase and went to board the plane. Lucky followed him, but then out of desperation, Paul kicked her away. Lucky yelped in pain, taken aback by what had happened. She had never experienced such behavior from her master before. Why did he now treat her this way? She sat down, waiting for Paul to come back for her, but he never did. After all the passengers had boarded, the plane began to move towards the runway. Lucky watched the plane disappear into the sky, then airport workers shooed the dog away. All night, Lucky sat outside the airport, and when another airplane arrived in the morning, she barked with joy and approached the disembarking passengers. She thought her master had returned and they would finally go home together, but Paul never came. Several weeks passed, and Lucky never left the airport grounds. Workers tried to get rid of her, but all efforts were in vain, as she would always reappear whenever another plane arrived. Soon, volunteers of the local animal shelter managed to catch her and place her in a foster family, but a few days later, she ran away from there and ended up at the airport again. She continued to meet planes, hoping to see her master. However, one day, she suddenly stopped. Whether she got tired of waiting or just stopped believing, or maybe a new loving owner took her in, or something happened to her, we don't know, but Lucky just disappeared. Yes, Paul could have taken care of his pet, could have found out in advance what documents he needed to be able to take her with him, but he opted for the easy way out and just left her behind. Friends, let's be more compassionate and considerate to our animal friends because we are responsible for those we have tamed.